Hi there and welcome to Tech Life, a channel where I aim to review everything from selfie sticks to laptops to IDs for coding, video editing, software for producing thumbnails, essentially anything tech related. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you have anything that you think I should review, please let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to review that product. In this video, we'll be taking a look at variables in JavaScript. As with any object-oriented language, there are two types of variables: primitive types and reference types. In this video, we'll concentrate on primitive types, and in my next video, we'll take a look at reference type variables. We use variables to temporarily store data. This data is stored in the computer's memory, and the location of this stored data is given a name. So this simple diagram uh, is a depiction of what potentially could be a memory location within a computer. And here we are showing variables x, y, and z. In real life, we wouldn't call variables x, y, and z. We would actually use a proper descriptive name when we are naming our variables. And since these are primitive variables, x, we're saying here x is actually equal to 1, y is equal to 2, and z is equal to 3. So in a primitive variable, the actual value of the variable is stored in the variable name, in the variable. And this is an important point to note, because when we come to look at reference variables, um, they are different, and I'll explain the difference in that upcoming video. So just to recap on this, x is equal to 1, y is equal to 2, z is equal to 3, but in reality, when we actually start coding properly, we would give these variables a meaningful name. So a few important things to note and remember when using variables. All JavaScript variables must be identified with a unique name. So you can't have two variables of the exact same name. These names are sometimes called identifiers. Identifiers can be short names X, Y, and Z, but as I say, it's not good coding practice to use X, Y, and Z. We actually use things that are meaningful. So you could have something like age, sum, total volume, etc. More general rules when we create variables. Names can contain letters, digits, underscores, and dollar signs. A variable name must begin with a letter, so you can't have a variable name that begins with a number. Names can also begin with a dollar, but to be honest, I would never use a dollar sign to start a variable name. Names are case sensitive, so JavaScript is a case sensitive language. So an uppercase A is different than a lowercase a, and that applies to all of the alphabet. So keep that in mind. And then obviously for variable names, we mustn't use keywords. So there's quite a few keywords, as with any programming language in JavaScript. So we have to be mindful not to use keywords as variable names, because then you will get an error thrown. So let's fire up Visual Studio Code and start using some variables. So if you've been following along, we created two files, homepage.html and output.js in the first couple of videos that we've done. We are going to jump over to output.js, the JavaScript file, and we've got one line of code here, console.log, which we don't need at the moment. So I'm going to use 2 forward slashes in order to comment out that line of code. We could have just deleted it, but I'm just going to leave it there for now. I'm going to put some more comments in. I'm going to say declare a variable. So in JavaScript, as with many other languages, you first have to declare a variable before you can use it. So declare a variable. And in order to declare a variable in JavaScript, we use the keyword let, L-E-T, let. And we're going to give this variable name. I'm going to call it car name, if I can spell name. And that is our first variable created within JavaScript. And if I do something like, let me copy copy this console.log, copy, paste, and if I output the value of car name to the log, we can see what it contains. Car name, console.log, file save, run. F12 to get to the DevTools, and you should be able to see undefined. The reason that is type undefined is because we haven't initialized our variable. We haven't initialized our variable, meaning that we haven't given our variable a starting value. So let's go and fix that. Come back to here. So this is step one, declare a variable. And step two is initialize a variable. And in order to initialize a variable, we use the name of the variable, car name, equals, and then we give it a value. And I'm going to give this a string value. That string is going to be, yeah, you guessed it, Lamborghini. And again, this line of code is terminated with a semicolon. And if we go ahead and run this now, F12. Now, when we output the value of the variable car name to the log, we see that it displays the value Lamborghini. So this value is a string. We know it's a string because we've encased the value Lamborghini in inverted commas. JavaScript allows us to use either single quotes or double quotes. So let's just go and prove that. Obviously, we can't mix and match. We can't have a double quote to start and then have a single quote on the other end, but we can have double quotes on both ends of the string. And if we go ahead and run this, F12, and again Lamborghini is output to the log. I actually prefer, and I think most JavaScript programmers prefer, a single quote for a string, so I'm going to revert back to single quotes. Okay, so step one, declare the variable. Step two, initialize the variable. Otherwise, the variable is going to be undefined in terms of its type. We can also clean this up a little bit first. Put in that. We can also use another keyword. It's called typeof. And using typeof allows us to get the type of a variable that we might have used. So I'm going to try to attempt to get the type of this variable, a car name, and I want to put that out to the console. Log. So I'm going to encase this typeof method within a console.log. Let me just. So this first console.log is just going to put the value contained within car name to the log, and this second console.log is going to use this method typeof. It's going to attempt to get the type of this method, and then output that to the log as well. Let's see what happens. So if we save this and we go ahead and run F12. So the first console.log outputs the value Lamborghini to the log, and then the second console.log actually outputs the type of the variable, which in this case was a string. That's cool. Okay, I'm going to clean this up a little bit because we wouldn't normally declare a variable and then initialize it on a different line. So we would normally do something like this. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to say car name is equal to Lamborghini, and I can get rid of this. Okay, so now we've used a keyword let in order to declare a variable, and we've also assigned a value. So we've initialized the variable all on one line. And we can create another variable. We could easily create another variable by placing a comma and typing the name of another variable. So we could have maybe model and then initialize that variable with another value. And we are going to have a model. I'm going to have the hurricane. And we're going to put it in quotes because it's a string. So it's hurricane. And now we have two variables declared and initialized. The first is car name, the second is model, and we can output both of these to the console. I'm not going to type this, it's going to copy this out. Copy, Control C, Control V, model, and let's output the type of Control C, Control V, model, save, run, F12. So the car name is Lamborghini, the model is Huracan, and they are both of type string. So that's declaring two variables, and they are both string. Again, we're going to clean this up because we wouldn't. Most programmers don't like to declare more than one variable on a line. So I would normally do another let statement and have a model on a different line. And quite often you'll see at the top of a program you'll have one or many declarations and initializations of variables at the top, and then further down, as we've done here, those variables are used. So it's probably better practice to use a single line per variable declaration initialization. But again, it's a preference thing. If you actually prefer using one line, then you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so far we've created two variables, and they've been both of them have been of type string. And you're probably wondering, are there any other types of variables that we can create? And the answer is yes. So as with any other programming language, you can have numbers or integers, and in order to declare an integer or a number, again we use the keyword let, and we give the integer variable a name. So in this case, we are going to say top speed. And in order to initialize top speed, we're going to give it a value. And because it's going to be a number, it's going to be an integer. We are not going to use inverted commas, or we are just going to type in a value. And I think the Huracan does a maximum speed of 202 miles an hour. I might be wrong with that, but I think it's about 202. Anyway, let's so we've used the keyword let. We've given our variable a name, top speed, and we've assigned it a value of 202. And again, we can output this to the console. Control V for paste, and I change this value to top speed, and I'm going to do the same with, come on, Control C, Control V, top speed. Cool. Save. F5 to run. F12 for our dev tools. So starting from the top, we have the car name as Lamborghini, we have the model as Huracan, and now we have a top speed of 202. A Lamborghini is a string, Huracan is a string, and now if you noticed, 202 is a number. So we can have strings and numbers. Let's continue with this, and we can have the decimals as well. So let's go back to the top here, and in order to create a decimal, we again use the keyword let, and we are going to give this variable a name of engine capacity. Yeah, engine capacity should be fine. Engine cap, I'm going to say. I'm not going to spell out capacity. Engine cap, and we're going to assign a value. So again, as a recap, we've used the keyword let. We've created a variable by giving it a name. So we've actually declared the variable, and now we're going to initialize it, and I'm going to give this a value of 5.2. I think that's a normally aspirated 5.2 litre engine in a Huracan. We're going to terminate that line of code with a semicolon, and I'm going to do Control C, Control V in order to output this to the log. Engine cap, and then we're going to do the same with the type of as well. So Control C, Control V, engine cap. Cool, that should work. Control S to save, and jump to our home page. F5 to run. F12 to get our dev tools. So again, starting from the top, we've got the car name Lamborghini, the model Huracan, a top speed of 202 miles an hour, and an engine capacity of 5.2 liters. And so the first two are strings, and the second two, you've noticed that instead of declaring this 5.2 as instead of defining the type of this decimal as a decimal, it's just defined as a number. So JavaScript doesn't differentiate between numbers and decimals in that regard. Obviously, if you come from a C# background, then you know there is a difference, a different way to declare integers and floating point numbers. But JavaScript is straightforward in that regard. It's a number. It sees it as a number, and it defines it as a number. Cool. Back to output.js, and we can continue with looking at these variables. Another very often used variable type in coding is the Boolean variable, which is a yes or no, or true or false binary type. So in order to declare a Boolean, we again use the keyword let, and we are going to call this is turbo. More often than not, Lamborghini engines are not turbo, so this would be a good candidate for another variable that I will discuss later on. But in this case, we're going to say is it turbo, and we're going to give it a value of false, because the Huracan doesn't have a turbo charged engine. It's a normally aspirated 5.2 litre engine in the standard Huracan. And I'm going to terminate this line of code with a semicolon. Let's look at this code again. Let as a keyword for declaring a variable, is turbo the name of the variable, and assign a value. Okay, and we have assigned the value false. Copy and paste the console.log is turbo, and then we're gonna do the same for the type of. Is turbo. Cool. Control S, F5 to run, F12 for DevTools, and now you can see Boolean. The false is a Boolean, so we've got two strings at the top, Lamborghini and Huracan. Then we've got two numbers, 202 as the top speed, 5.2 as the engine capacity, and then is it a turbo? No, it's not. So that's a Boolean. Excellent. Okay, let's move on to a different type of variable. And this type of variable is called a constant. So as the name suggests, variables, normal variables can have their values changed within code, and they might change for a number of different reasons. But constant variables, once their values have been set, then we cannot change that value in code. And in order to declare a constant, we use the keyword const. And as with any other variable, we will give this a name, and I'm going to give this a name of 0 to 60. Okay, and I'm going to assign a value of 4.9. I think it's 4.9. I might be wrong, but I'm going to assign a value of 4.9. Oh, I'm going to type that incorrectly. I'm going to assign a value of 4.9, terminate that with a semicolon, and we are going to delete some space up here, delete some space there, Control C this, Control V, 0 to 60, and just do the same here as well, Control C, Control V, 0 up, Control Z, 0 to 60 there, Control S, F5, F12. Okay, so the constant value is a type number because it was set to 4.9, so it is a number. So this type of type corresponds with this 4.9, and that's fine. But if I go ahead and encode something like this, 0 to 60 equals 5.1, Control S, and now we get an error. It's telling us the assignment to constant variable is caught an uncaught error, and that's because we've attempted to change the value of a constant variable. Constant variables are useful in many different scenarios within coding. So that's why they are included in pretty much every programming language. So just bear in mind, if you declare your constant variable, then don't attempt to change it later on in the code, because you will encounter issues. Errors will be thrown. The last thing we are going to discuss is something called dynamic types and static types. So you might have noticed that all of these variables that we've declared and initialized, we've not explicitly defined their type. So if I can type something out, in C#, you would have something like string, my variable equals, and then a value here. So this would mean that my variable is of type string. It's got an initial value of test, and my variable would only ever be able to contain values of string throughout the program. And these type of programming languages are called statically typed. So C# is a statically typed programming language. That's not the case with JavaScript, and we're going to prove that. So we can delete that, and we leave some space here, and I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it engine. If I can spell engine properly. So engine initially is going to be it's going to be a string. No, sorry, it's not. It's going to be it's just going to be a number. It's going to be a decimal. So engine is 5.2. I'm going to copy and paste this. So engine. I can output this. Copy that. I'm going to leave a space between these. That should tell us what type it is. Cool. So, okay, engine is 5.2, and it's a number. So these are the only two we're interested in. So initially, when we've declared the engine, we've said it's 5.2 liter engine, and it's because it's a number. Since we assigned a value of 5.2 to it, its type as a number. So we can go ahead and do something like this now. We can use the variable engine, and we can say now we'd rather have a more descriptive name or value for engine, and so we might give it a value of 5.2 and 5.2 liters, give it a capital L, and we might say it's a naturally aspirated V10. And so sorry, now it doesn't just contain the number 5.2, it actually contains alphanumeric characters. We've encased those in inverted commas, which means this is now a string. Okay. So just to recap, initially we created the variable engine and we gave it a value of 5.2, therefore it was a number. Now in code, after we've declared and initialized it, we've decided that engine now is going to be a string. Let's see what happens here. So Control S to save, F5 to run, F12. So now the value of engine is 5.2 liter naturally aspirated V10, and it's a string now. And I think that's quite amazing. I mean, JavaScript in that regard is very different than C++, C Sharp, Java. As far as I know, dynamic types are not part of Java. But certainly JavaScript, which, as I say in the first video, is nothing to do with Java. JavaScript is a totally separate programming language. It just happens to have the word Java in its name, and it has nothing to do with the actual Java programming language. But dynamic types are quite amazing, quite useful, and something that's quite special to JavaScript. Okay, I think we can wrap this video up here. Just a quick recap on what we discussed in this video. We said that there are two different types of variables, or two different kinds of variables, primitive types and reference types. In this particular video, we are and have been discussing primitive types. There's going to be a follow-up video to this where we look at reference types. We said that we use variables to temporarily store data. In order to use variables, we first have to declare a variable, and then we actually use the word let as a keyword in order to declare it, and then we assign a value to the variable. If we do not assign a value to a variable, then its type is going to be undefined. It's good practice to actually initialize your variables as you declare them. There are 5 primitive types in JavaScript. We've looked at all of those. Actually, we've looked at most of those. We haven't looked at the null type. So we've looked at numbers, Boolean, strings, and we've looked at undefined, but we hadn't looked at null, and null is also a type in JavaScript. We looked at constant variables, and constant variables differ to normal variables in that once we have assigned a value to a constant variable in code, we cannot change that value again. If we attempt to change the value, then an error will be thrown. And lastly, we looked at dynamic types in JavaScript. And dynamic types, as we've seen, we can change the type of a variable by simply assigning a different type value to a declared variable. And that's it. I think we are done. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please do hit that like button and maybe even consider subscribing. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one.